Oseo.
Oseo.
A Cherokee greeting. My theme today is water, ama, in Cherokee. And I'm going to start out with, I'm sure most everybody has heard about the North Dakota pipeline and what's going on there. Most of the media does not let the rest of the world what's going on there. But it's been a very sacred manner. The place that this is taking place is on the Missouri River, and it is actually the very heart of Turtle Island. And the people being called in English Standing Rock, and that's Indian Wasarahe, meaning the people who stand up for this earth. That's who they are, and that's been their responsibility and their obligation to do that. And it turned out to be the gathering of the 7 council fires there in completion. That'd be the unity of our First Nations there, which was not, the news only covered people who were making action like spray painting bulldozers or something like that. And it's gone back and forth and back and forth. The only way that we could approach that is to somehow bring question to the route that the Army Corps of Engineers approved for this pipeline. This pipeline is of no domestic benefit whatsoever. It is strictly a corporation. It's strictly for Trump and his fellows to make money off of. It's of no benefit to anybody in this country but them. And the latest that just came out in the paper, a federal court judge ruled that the Dakota Access Pipeline may continue operating while the Army Corps of Engineers reviews its impact report. But it already has been noticed that it was gerrymandering, because if it had gone another few yards, it would have been in the reservation of Standing Rock. And this comment from the lawyer, the earthquake justice attorney: today's decision is disappointing continuation of a historic pattern. Other people get all of the profits, and the First Nations get all of the risk and harm. And it also was being able to be considered, in court because of a new something that's come into it, what they call it, environmental justice, when a minority population may not have the resources to defend their rights. So that's very interesting in that way. Water as something sacred. Last week I introduced Don Fernando Coronado. Coronado has been much celebrated. We have a bridge named after him as being whatever the first civilized man or the first white man or whatever to enter into salvage America or any of those kind of things to justify his entry. He was decided to enter into the Southwest about 40 years after Columbus and so forth like that. Basically 1492, which we had an occasion last week, Columbus Day, that was when he sailed the ocean blue, with good reason, because in 1492 the Isabella Trump government of Castile, Spain, evicted all Semitic people, first Jewish people and then the Mohammed Berbers and all of that. And it was believed that these people had fled with their gold or their money or something like that. Since Castile was a very poor country, southern Spain was very wealthy, and so forth. So somehow with that idea in mind, Coronado mounted a huge expedition to pursue, for some reason, that he thought these people who lived in the Southwest, who are now called Zuni, at Zuni Pueblo, were Berbers. And everything to the evidence of that. And what I'm going to get to is, in his journal, he shows much evidence that he thought these people were that, because he had been part of the Castilian war raids into Morocco, then Mauritania, and where he encountered these people who are nowadays known as the Berbers. And the Berbers are actually people originally from the island of Crete, the goddess of the Sibyl, Cabell, for which they named themselves, and in which the island of hers, that she was the goddess of nature, and her island was a wildlife sanctuary. In particular was the deer in that island, because of the rest of the world around that island changed or modernized. That island became very conservative. Somehow they ended up there in what we now call Morocco there. And these people are still there, still referred to as the Berbers and so forth. Somehow they did make it over here. And whatever gave Coronado the idea that these people were there and they had their wealth, he proceeded this expedition to go there. Interesting, in his journal, he does write a lot of comparisons to the people he found at Zuni to the people he saw in Morocco. And one of those was that this photo here by Edward Curtis is 1903. These are so-called Zuni women. And you can see why, because that's what he said. He actually used the phrase, the women at Zuni dress just like our women in Morocco. And you see how that they look. And the other thing he said about them, he said they are sophisticated. Imagine that. You know, he said that of these people, they were sophisticated, and they only worshipped the sun, and they worshipped the water. And so that's my theme right here. And here, these women have these oyas on top of their heads. The other thing he wrote, he said, just like the people in Morocco, they have atobis. He pronounced it atobi, it's an Arab word, with their garden plots alongside of them, indeed. And this water, this is probably the Zuni River behind them, and they would transport the water, these great oyas, to pour on their garden plots, as we would call them there. And all of this way of not just worshiping the water, but a respect to the water. And the paintings on their oyas, this is my replication of one. This woman here has a painting on the oya like this one, where the deer is always respected in that. And the other things I have of here, this is a water jar made by Tony Suarez out here in Yucca Valley. He's a Cahuilla, continues the Cahuilla tradition in that. And that they would, because I know people who have found these things where people have stashed them places for people walking who would get water. Nowadays people put out those plastic jugs of water for people who are coming across the border. And the other thing I have down there that I found out in the desert is made out of sumac woven together with pine pitch around it. This is somebody's water canteen. It's pretty old, and people, Paiutes, Navajos, and Apaches make things like that. The only kind of baskets the people at Zuni Pueblo make are these yucca ring basket, and this is the only kind of basket you can put into water. It's a sifter basket to wash your beans or radishes and things like that. So this is the way of my introducing water. And this is my reading for that. Oholea takuwakan, honorable great spirit in the creation, wakaga, that you have made, praying to the water contained in a clay pot. This water represents all the waters everywhere, the lakes and rivers, big and little, of this red earth. Here, this pot of water, Mni, bears a certain spiritual power enacting this vision as I speak. And so, Oholea, do we pray as we say through the water to Takuwakan, Great Spirit, wet us down. Yisbahach, hot weather makes us thirsty, and we must need to drink water. So consider before we take a drink of it, we spill a bit on Mother Earth, so that these spirit folks can partake of the water also. Bueno.